Welcome to Legends of the Ink. Well, I'm Dakota,
And I'm Jacky.
and today we are talking about Ursula's Return lore set 4.
Dun dun dun. We finally made it.
Yeah, so this is like the end of the saga of our first saga, I guess.
Yeah. And this is really where the Disney storytelling comes into its peak with the story, the videos, the game, even.
Yeah, some of the products, like
Yeah, so
Illuminator's Quest, for example.
exactly. So, and we're done with guessing. We have just straight story. We know Ursula's our big baddie.
Yeah, so to start, I think we do a quick recap of the first 3 sets just so we know how we got here,
Yes.
and we will then dive into the lore of Ursula's Return.
All right.
So, the realm of Lorcana exists far away in a distant dimension, and its main feature is the Great Illuminary. The Great Illuminary is an accumulation of all the stories ever told. The curator developed the Great Illuminary to keep those stories so that they weren't lost to time. The Illuminaires harness the starlight and the various gadgets around the Great Illuminary to create glimmers, to tell their story so that the Illuminaires could record it and keep it on the shelves. Glimmers are copies of the characters in the story and not the characters themselves. The Illuminaires could also create glimmers of lore or items that are significant to the stories being recorded. The ink used to create these glimmers is the source of power in Lorcana. Some time ago, something happened which left the Great Illuminary abandoned, until it called out to new Illuminaires for help. This allowed the glimmers to return to the Great Illuminary. Each of the new Illuminaires were given an inkcaster to harness the power of the inks and their glimmers. The 6 inks in Lorcana are Amber, Amethyst, Emerald, Ruby, Sapphire, and Steel. Amber glimmers are purposeful and work together as bodyguards, healers, singers, and followers. Amethyst glimmers are wondrous and are incredibly powerful, harnessing the power of sorcerers. Emerald glimmers are flexible and have the power to adapt to any situation. Ruby glimmers are daring, and they can use their speed and temper to conquer. Sapphire glimmers are smart and can make use of inventions and items to their benefit. Steel glimmers are strong and are often tough, strengthened, or bodyguards, and they use force to get the job done. We meet the new Illumineers, which are Shenze, Martin, Venturo, and all of us. When the new Illumineers go into the portal to Lorcana, they are greeted by glimmers like Mickey Mouse True Friend, and the magic brooms, which are taking care of the Great Illuminary in the absence of the past Illumineers. We also meet Detective Mickey, who is investigating a strange piece of seaweed. He has requested help from Basil in the investigation. Venturo starts to figure out the meaning of the various pieces of lore, or items, found in the Great Illuminary. All of our new Illumineers are trying to decipher this new realm. Martin then discovers a secret room with a lore book that is covered in barnacles, and it plays 3 notes, which are similar to what we heard when the portals were formed. Martin takes out his Inkcaster, which is a guitar, and plays the 3 notes he remembers. This releases a flood of dark ink to spread through the Great Illuminary, causing some of the glimmers to shift into new and more powerful forms. The flood eventually falls into the Inklands, but not before sweeping up some of the lore or items that were housed in the Great Illuminary. Martin tried to grab King Triton's trident, but decided to save his friend Venturo instead. We see glimmers begin to assist in the investigation of the flood and the missing lore book. Some of the glimmers begin to search the Inklands to find the lost lore book and other various pieces of lore that was lost in the flood. We are searching for all the lore that was lost, but specifically the Lucky Dime. Venturo, Audrey Ramirez, Prince Eric, and Tinkerbell start their adventure in an ink runner, guided by the Aurelian gyrosphere. Venturo and team were able to recover the Sumerian talisman. Tinkerbell then finds King Triton's trident, but Venturo takes the group in a different direction to find the Lucky Dime. We then see Magica Dispel's Shadow claim the trident for themselves. We see that there are 2 sides in the search, with the heroes helping the Illumineers to find the lost lore, and the villains, which are trying to take advantage of the flood and use it for their own personal gain. This brings us into set 4, Ursula's Return.
Great recap. Yeah, so it's introducing us to the story of Lorcana, and finally, like, we're getting up to this set 4. I don't know where I'm going.
The big finish, the end of the saga.
Yes.
So let's start with some of the story, I think,
Yeah.
for set
So
four.
we start out with the set four story has a couple different parts here. So our first one is the story of Belle and Beast trying to fight Ursula. And it's more of a side story. It ends up being basically Beast was fighting Ursula, got the seaweed little tentacles on him, got all cut. Belle ventures into the Inklands and then ends up finding the magic rose, and she has to step into the ink and transform, and that's what's going to save Beast. So that's our first kind of main story, and we get the cards from that. If we want to go over those real quick.
Yeah, let's do that. So in the side story, I believe Belle is trying to stop Beast from getting taken over by Ursula's spell.
Mm-hmm. So we start with like Beast wounded, and his flavor text is it wasn't the severity of the wounds, but the sickly substance that caused such unbearable pain. And then when we go to Belle, so we have Belle Accomplished Mystic, which is one of my favorite cards and art in general.
Wonderful card art.
Uh,
One of the best play mats as well.
yeah, 100%. So, and that's after she's stepped into the ink, and her flavor text says the mixed ink had changed more than just the rose. And then there's two rose cards. So there's a mystical rose, and that one is just the rose kind of sitting in the ink. And it says,
Orb that we see it in the Great Illuminary.
yep. And it says, ink surrounded Belle's last hope to heal Beast. With no other choice, she reached out for it. And then we have the rose lantern, which is like once Belle has picked it up. And that one says the transformed rose made short work of Beast's wound, but even the gentlest magic comes at a cost. So, and I don't know if we know exactly what that means.
What the cost is.
Yeah. So that's something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, we'll look for that.
All right. So diving into the core story of this set. So it's broken down into four parts. The first one being the Eye of the Storm, I think. Okay, so diving into the core of the story with Ursula's return is broken down into four parts, and I'm just going to read it word for word because I think it's important to give you the full story. So, starting with part one, the excitement of exploration. That's what Minnie Mouse loved most about diving. So, when Shanzay needed glimmers to find connections between the flood and the rash of recent disappearances, a mini glimmer immediately volunteered to explore a nearby cove, small, uncharted, and full of dense plant life. It looked perfectly safe, especially if a Donald Duck glimmer joined her. Now that she was far from the base camp, with Donald searching another part of the cove's watery depths, Minnie was having second thoughts about her decision. What Minnie thought would be a cheerful quest for clues had turned into something much different. She heard a faint voice singing and followed its melody to a glowing cave surrounded by tall, slowly waving stalks of seaweed. Every underwater noise echoed, and the plants brushing her arms felt like deft blades threatening to scratch and cut. She closed her eyes and took calm breaths through the rebreather that Shanzay had given her. The song came more loudly now. Its words were indistinct, but the sound was both beautiful and terrible. The voice came into focus, silky, awful, full of power. It was Ursula. Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun.
Minnie tried to kick her feet to return to the surface, but found them somehow wrapped in thick, ropey seaweed. She couldn't make it back to the surface, let alone the camp. She couldn't even move. She was trapped. Slowly, strands of black, purple seaweed, impossibly cold, wrapped around her legs, arms, and helmet. Then the world went dark. So that's part one. Minnie gets trapped by Ursula. I also like the idea of the rebreathers. Rebreathers instead of like a scuba tank.
Oh, yeah. I did not catch that the first time.
That's cool.
That is cool.
All right, part two. The art of like the first part one is Minnie being like entangled in the tentacles and black spirals and her eyes glowing pink.
Mm.
The art for part two is Mickey Mouse Musketeer, kind of celebrating in all of his glory. All right, part two. Shanzay glanced up from adjusting her tense fastenings, tightening a knot for the sixth time. Are you okay? Martin asked. That rope could hold down the iron vulture. I don't think your little tent is going anywhere. Shanzay sighed. Yeah, I just can't shake the feeling that something's off, that something bad is about to happen. Like, have you seen Minnie? She went out to explore the cove. Martin shrugged. I haven't, but I can ask Venturo about her if it's bugging you. Okay, Shanzay agreed. Martin sauntered across the camp to Venturo's tent, leaving Shanzay alone with her thoughts. This was silly, she chided herself. Everything is fine. As she returns to her tent, Shanzay heard a crashing sound from the supply pavilion, followed by Sacre bleu! She jogged over, tore open the flap, and peered into the candlelit room. The acrid smell of seaweed and old fish washed over her. Lumiere stood trembling on a table, beside which a figure stood with pale glowing eyes and covered in pink seaweed bindings. Minnie? Shanzay whispered. Is that you? A laugh, both Minnie's and not Minnie's, came from the shape. In an instant, Minnie snatched Lumiere and plunged him into a waterproof diving bag and pushed past Shanzay with alarming alacrity onto the beach. Stop! Shanzay shouted. She sprinted after the unexpected thief until they reached the cove. Minnie dove into the water and was gone. What was that? Martin gasped as he ran up, followed by Venturo and a Mickey Glimmer. I think that was Minnie, Shanzay said, and she ran off with Lumiere. She quickly described the figure in the tent, covered in dreadful seaweed vines, reeking of the ocean, with glowing unnatural eyes. It was like she was possessed, Shanzay said, like something in the ocean had entangled her body and her mind somehow. That seaweed, Venturo said. Was it the same shade of pink that was all over the room where this whole mess started? Shanzay nodded, and the Illumineer shared a knowing glance. Ursula, Martin spat. But what could she want with a singing candelabra? And what did she do with Minnie? Mickey asked, his musketeer captain's cape trailing behind him as he ran to the edge of the water and peered in. Don't worry, friend, Venturo put a hand on Mickey's shoulder. We're going to help her. You can help her. All for one and one for all, Mickey acknowledged. Right, Shanzay cracked her knuckles. Let's get our friends back. Yes, that's part two. Part three, we got Louisa and her donkey and a sword. So it looks like she's in the depths of the battle.
Yeah, it looks like she's about to really get into it here. So part three is the Illuminaires track the mini Glimmer to a small Sargasso Sea a few miles away from the small island. There she is, Louisa Madrigal shouted, but I don't see the bag she was carrying or your candle friend. They all looked into the water and saw that the fleeing Glimmer's legs was somehow wedged in a coral reef. She must have stashed Lumiere somewhere or handed him off. If only we could get through to Minnie and ask what happened. I'm going to try to pry her loose, Venturo said. Then maybe she'll play nice with us. He fastened his rebreather and borrowed Mickey's stiff scabbard before diving into the briny murk. But the closer Venturo approached, the more Minnie squirmed and jostled her trapped leg. I think I did more harm than good, Venturo said when he resurfaced. Pluto began barking, and Mickey patted him on the head. Easy boy, Mickey said, before turning to Shanzay. Do you really think you could get through to Minnie? Shanzay bit her lip. Maybe, but I'm going to need your help. After adjusting their own rebreathers, the two dove into the perilous water. Minnie was still trying to free her leg from the coral, though her movements were slower than before. She was tiring. Shanzay and Mickey drifted to her side. You're Minnie, Shanzay said, with the rebreather. You're good. There's nothing to be afraid of. You're strong and fierce, Shanzay said, hoping her distorted voice would get through to her companion. Then she nodded at Mickey. You're a helper. You're good. You're more than enough. All on your own, the Mickey Glimmer added. Just then the pale glow of Minnie's eyes flickered and she froze in place. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but before she could, a great, terrible voice echoed through the water. Or was it through Shanzay's mind? Aha! Clever, clever, but not nearly as clever as you think, Illumineer. I'm taking what is mine, and your little game is at an end. With one final jerk, Minnie's leg was free, and she quickly vanished into the inky underwater dark, away from Mickey's reaching hand. When Shanzay and Mickey climbed into the ink runner, the Illumineers gave her companions a huge smile. We found a weakness, she said. It's not much, but it might give us an opening. Now let's go see if the sea witch is home.
Yeah, so breaking through to Minnie a little bit, but through the, talking underwater is impossible.
Very challenging to do, yeah.
So there's a chance, is what
There's
you
a
say.
chance.
All right, part 4, and that's the Captain Hook glimmer, but he's also possessed with the pink eyes, wrapped in seaweed and whatnot. Shanze gasped when she finally saw it. In the far distance, Ursula's fortress loomed like a sinister aquarium decoration, a nightmare of twisted coral and half-smashed shells. The sea witch would be even more powerful here, Shanze knew. But they had a secret on their side. By getting through to the glimmer's true self, they could disrupt Ursula's control, at least temporarily. You ready? Martin asked over her shoulder. As I'll ever be, Shanze said with a sardonic grin. When the two Illumineers turned to watch the Mickey glimmer at the helm, a rogue wave, far too precise to be natural, washed over the Ink Runner's deck. As it receded, a Captain Hook glimmer, wrapped in seaweed, stood in its place. Shanze saw Martin shudder. We can handle this, she told him. Trust me. My lady bids you remove yourself from these waters and find another port of call, Hook shouted. Not happening, Shanze yelled back. Aren't you Captain Hook? The glimmer bowed. In the flesh, he replied. Then why are you, the great Captain Hook, taking orders from someone else? Shanze continued. That's absurd, young lady, Hook said. I'm not. Are you, though? Shanze interrupted, pressing the verbal attack. Because if you're here on Ursula's orders to intimidate us, that means someone is commanding the great Captain Hook. Shanze watched as the pale light in Hook's eyes began to flicker. What would Peter Pan say if he could see you taking orders? Martin added, taking up the mantle. Hook's mouth hung open and he stood stock still. After several agonizing seconds, Martin waved a hand cautiously in front of Hook's face, but the captain didn't respond. We did it, Martin beamed. Just then, Hook's eyes flared to life, and the next instant he was in the water and swimming away quickly, far faster than any crocodile, and was soon out of sight. Shanze let out a long breath before turning to take Mickey's hand. We'll get Minnie back, don't you worry, she said. We're going to put Ursula in a fish tank so small she'll spend the next 100 years looking at her own tentacles. All right, so that's the end of our 4-part series. We got Captain Hook to switch back, and I like how they taunted him out of it.
Yeah, that's so funny and faster than any crocodile.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. If you want to read any of these on your own, they are on the Disney Lorcana site under stories. That way you can also get your own understanding and see your own pictures and stuff like that.
Yeah. Our next portion of the story jumps to the sneak peek video.
The teaser video.
And we'll just quickly run through what happens there. All right, so the teaser video, it starts out with Bruno sitting in Ursula's cave having this vision, and it's basically the two Ursulas, one with the Triton and then the crown in between them, and it looks like they're fighting over it. And then we have our Lumineers show up.
On Bruno's slab, we see the Lumineers fighting against Ursula, it seems.
So, and Bruno has the pink eye, so he's under
the control of Ursula.
Yeah. Then we flash forward to the Illumineers approaching Ursula's cave, and then Bruno being surrounded by all the other, controlled glimmers. So we have Majika, Prince Eric, Jafar, Minnie, and then a bunch of other eyes behind them.
That you can't really make out in this image.
Yeah, and then it kind of zooms out, and then there's hundreds of eyes behind them.
Yeah, it's a lot of glimmers.
And then we see Ursula, just a singular Ursula with both the crown and the trident. And then that's kind of it cuts there, leaving us at this great battle to come.
And that great battle is actually enacted in the Illuminator's Quest product that you can buy, where you get 2 starter decks, not starter decks, but 2 player decks and an Ursula deck. So Ursula's deck is going to be all of the glimmers that are under Ursula's control, and in order to defeat Ursula, you have to pass the quest, essentially. Just to highlight some of the character cards that are in Ursula's deck, they include Anna, Bruno, Captain Hook, Flotsam and Jetsam, Gaston, Hey Hey, Hercules, Jafar, the Mad Hatter, Majika Dispel, Minnie, Prince Eric, Tamatoa, and Triton's daughters, not including Ariel.
Yeah.
So those are all the main cards in Ursula's deck, which we are fighting against in order to save Lorcana.
Yeah, and I think it's so cool because this really ties in. So one, it's like we have to work together, me and you or whoever else you're playing with, but we are truly the Illumineers battling Ursula
Yeah, yeah.
to save the day. Along with like Martin, Shanzay, Venturo, Mickey.
And I think it's super cool that they left this gap in the story for us to be a part of it,
Right.
essentially.
Right. Like this goes back to like this is Disney storytelling at its finest.
Yeah,
So
so good.
it's so cool. Because like if you don't play the game, like that really is the story. Because hopping to our next step is the epilogue of everything being over.
Okay, we're going to run through some of the cards, what we saw in them, as well as just some honorable mentions that we
Yeah.
liked.
There's a lot of like Easter eggs in this one, so we're not going to go through every single one, but more story relevant ones.
And a lot of the Easter egg ones are you can see the glimmer in battle,
Mm-hmm.
things like that.
Yeah, a couple of side stories we might touch on. But so our first ones are Prince Eric and Ursula sitting in like the same throne and they're side by side and
Yeah, it's Ursula's groom and Eric's bride, so it's kind of cool to see them in the same throne and backdrop and everything. Eric looks petrified while Ursula is just like kicking her feet up.
the big cheese. Vanessa form Ursula, by the way.
If you want to see the cards for the Belle storyline, you would look at Belle Untrained Mystic, Belle Accomplished Mystic, as well as Mystical Rose and Rose Lantern.
And Beast wounded.
And Beast Wounded. Yep.
So, getting into the main story, we have Flotsam, Ursula's baby, holding the Hexwell crown, with his flavor text saying, "Now the crown and the trident are mine," Ursula. And then the Jetsam, Ursula's baby, saying, "He snatched the trident from the betrayed Glimmer." So this goes into
The two different Ursulas that are fighting each other. One Ursula is Ursula Sea Witch Queen. The other Ursula is Ursula Deceiver of All.
And I believe it's Dreamborn versus Floodborn. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, and you can also tell the difference between the two of them because the Ursula Deceiver of All has green and purple hair with starfish earrings on, as well as green coming out of her blouse. The green and purple are to symbolize the two ink colors that you can find Ursula in her normal form, other than the Vanessa form, which is only in amber.
Oh, look at you. Our next card is Ursula's Plan, and it's both the Ursulas with the contract in front of them, one holding the trident and one holding the crown. And it says, "With both the crown and the trident together, we would be unstoppable." So they are seemingly working together, and they got their fishbone quill in there.
And this is a great time to remind everybody that glimmers are not the characters themselves. They are just a snapshot of a character in a story. So that's why there are two Ursulas in
Exactly,
this
yeah, you can
story.
have multiples.
Yeah.
And then our next one is Ursula Mad Sea Witch. So, and this one kind of shows so the Mad Sea Witch, which is Dreamborn, and she's got the trident. So the other one has the crown then. And it looks like they're arguing. You can see the crown being held by the other Ursula, not agreeing as they should. I don't know if you're trying to be like double team villain.
Right. And the flavor text after her Flotsam, I can't rule Lorcana without the Hexwell crown. Another reference straight to the realm of Lorcana.
And then we just have the Ursula Sea Witch Queen, which has both the trident and the crown.
And the difference is you have the Flotsam and Jetsam that are Ursula's baby, which go with the Ursula Deceiver of All, and then the Floodborn shift version, which is Flotsam and Jetsam together on a card, are the Flotsam and Jetsam for Sea Witch Queen, Ursula.
And Floodborn versions.
And Floodborn
At
version.
least what I was tracking.
So that's cool that they kind of tied those together.
Yeah. So then we have Ursula's Trickery, and it's the one Ursula with the trident trying to steal the crown, and it says, How dare you double-cross me, Ursula shouted, lunging at the other glimmer. So,
So they're definitely having some sort of a conflict.
Yep, the double-cross. Oh, one of the shout-outs that I thought was interesting was Diablo Maleficent Spy, and that flavor text is, keep an eye on the sea witch, my pet. Tell me everything, Maleficent. So...
And you can see Maleficent in the background of the card art.
So is Maleficent trying to be a good person here, maybe? Or at least not, obviously not her big bad, but...
Or trying to figure out when she can capitalize on Ursula's mistakes.
Fair. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting. Another shout out is the Gus and Jacques cards, and their pictures align. So you have Gus sitting there with his piece of cheese with the thread wrapped around him, and then Jacques reaching out off the table trying to reach more cheese. And it's a cute one.
It's just cute, yeah.
I love it when the cards they play together.
Have a story together, yeah.
So shout out there. So we have signed contract, and that's like the Ursula contract with a blast either going into it or out of it. I'm not sure if it's the contract being created or being destroyed, honestly. Do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's created or destroyed. I think that it's during their battle because the flavor text is, I would love to help you, of course, but there's a little matter of the contract as the flavor text.
So, yeah, it's another part of the story. Bruno's vision slab.
Bruno's vision slab, which shows the Illumineers going to fight Ursula. Another cool shout out is the Snuggly Duckling. This one's just cool art. The original card is in the daytime, while the enchanted card is kind of surrounded by darkness and in the nighttime. I believe all of the enchanted cards are kind of dark in this set because it's how Ursula sees them in her like globe, essentially.
Ooh. Okay, that's cool. Another cool shout out is Ice Block, which like we play all the time, but you never read the flavor text when you're actually playing. But it says frozen ink can be harvested and processed to many useful ends.
It's cool that we know we can freeze the ink and use them for something different.
Exactly.
I don't know what yet, but
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, not a clue, but and it looks like obviously like the Frozen Saw intro.
Right, with good stuff.
So another one of the villains, so probably related to like the Maleficent one, is Hades, meticulous plotter. And his flavor text says, this neat little scheme has Ursula's tentacles all over it, that sneaky sea witch. Wait, I can use this. She can keep those obnoxious Illumineers busy while I roll out my own plan.
Ooh,
so that's just another villains trying to take advantage of different opportunities, I guess.
Also us hoping that Hades is a big bad one day.
That would be cool. We all love to hate Hades.
Ariel treasure collector card. In the artwork, you can see she is holding an Inkcaster. It is actually the hidden Inkcaster card that she's holding. So that's a cool one. So one of the cool side stories that we didn't touch on much is the Hans Anna side story. Hans is recruited by Ursula to get Anna onto Ursula's mind-controlled team. So it shows it in the cards here. And the cards say, Hans was confident he could bring Anna to Ursula. All he needed was something of Kristoff's to lure her in. Anna's card says, after talking to Olaf, Anna marched into the unexpected storm to save Kristoff. And on the Olaf card, it says, isn't this Kristoff's hat? If he went this way, he'll be caught in that storm.
So, and we know that Anna is one of the glimmers that Ursula has control over. So,
right.
Hans doing
Hans things.
Hans doing Hans things. So those are the main ones.
Yeah, those are all the main cards that we called out. There's a bunch others that are.
Yeah, there's a million of them, but like honestly, you could look at almost every card in the set and be like, oh, and then there's this here and this here and this here. So.
But we tried to cover the main ones for you so that it all fit into the story. I think we should roll into the epilogue, which then will lead us into set 5, Shimmering Skies.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay. So our epilogue is called The Missing Piece, and it looks like the Hexwell crown and like half of it at least, but it's
half Hexwell crown, some would say.
All right. So this says a fleck of purple dust drifted through the air and settled on a musketeer hat. A Mickey Mouse glimmer brushed it away absently while he surveyed the battleground. His fellow glimmers dotted the scene along with their Lumineer companions. Together, they examined wreckage around Ursula's abandoned lair. Does this mean we have to clean all this up? Venturo said while trying to kick off a tendril of purple kelp which had wrapped itself around his leg. Mulan prodded the kelp with her arrow to make sure it wouldn't try to entangle them. It didn't. Martin joined Mickey atop a large dried up reef, which was split down the center. The Illumineer wore a pained look on his face, but it faded as he pointed to the ground near Venturo. What's that? Shanzay and Ariel were by Venturo's side in no time, and the group stared in silence at the object that was partially nested in the mud. Isn't that? Shanzay stopped short. It was a crown, or rather, part of one, the Hexwell crown. The three remaining prongs that radiated upward from the crown were each adorned with an amethyst gem, while a much larger gem sat in the center. Before anyone had a chance to say anything, Ariel reached down and tugged the crown fragment loose, the mud making a soft squelching noise as the object finally came free. The massive gem in the crown center glinted briefly as Ariel raised it to eye level. Mickey gasped, and the rest of the group took an involuntary step backwards. But the gem soon dulled with a single faint, inky black swirl of magic rose from the crown itself. Venturo broke the silence. Fascinating. Even though it's fractured, there's still some trace amounts of energy. He trailed off and was quickly lost in thought. But look at those jagged edges, Martin said quickly. The rest must have been destroyed. He hesitated for a moment. Right? Shanzay shook her head slowly. It's too much of a risk. We've all seen what that thing can do. If there's any more of the crown out there, we need to find it. Let's go. Mulan took out her bun and wrapped the crown piece with the long green strip of fabric she used to keep her hair up. Venturo then gingerly packed it in his bag. Once the group made it back to the Hall of Lorcana, they found the alcove in which the Hexwell crown was originally stored and returned the item to its rightful home. Only this time, Venturo added a clever security feature that reinforced a protective sphere around it and threw in a handful of motion-sensing drones for good measure. Shanzay, for her part, set a pair of glimmers to guard the crown. Sleepy, who was guaranteed to stay at his post, and Kronk, who provided some much-needed muscle. While almost nothing could be certain in this realm of magical ink and wild imagination, the Illumineers could at least hope that this broken item of power was finally safe in their keeping. The first four sets.
The first saga. I like it.
Yeah, I think it's such a good story once we finally get to this piece of it, and I don't know, just the different components. Mostly the game, I think, is so cool to me.
Yeah,
Like
that's
that
super
is a
cool.
core part of the story. It really makes you part of the story.
I'm hoping we get another one because we know our next big bad, I guess, already. But
Right.
I'm hoping we get another one when we have the set 8 Reign of Jafar.
Right. So they go in set 4s, it seems like.
Yeah, sets of 4, I think, is how the story is going to run here.
Okay. That's fine with me. I'm
Yeah.
excited about it.
I like it. I like it a lot.
And specifically, I guess, just in this epilogue, I like how who is it, Venturo's doing like his nerdy science stuff to protect it. Shanzay's like sending her glimmers.
Yeah.
Like everyone's doing their little parts.
Right, and all of it relates to their ink colors too.
Yeah.
So like Venturo is sapphire ink color, Shanzay is ruby, so it works out.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
So yeah, no real like guessing or predicting anything in this one. It's just story,
Just
open, close.
That's awesome. So that's what we have for the story.
Yeah, let us know if you have any questions, comments, anything we missed. Again, this one was pretty straightforward, but I am excited to start digging into all the ones real time if we can catch up.
Yeah, only 2 more to go.
2 more to go.
And we'll be caught up with the most recent set that's releasing in less than a month.
Awesome.
Let's jump into This Week in Lorcana. What did you do this week in Lorcana, Jackie?
I had my first real top 8. It's a champs.
That's super exciting.
It is exciting. So like I've technically top eighted before, but it was like a smaller group, so it didn't like feel as earned. But this one was at Game and Co, our regular store. It was streamed, or at least so my game going into top eight. So
The game you had to play and win in order to get into top 8
yes.
was
So
streamed.
I was the feature match, so which is kind of
Yeah,
funny because
that's
and it was just with Jess, which of course we know Jess from last week. She's one of her friends here, but no, it was fun.
yeah.
Like I don't know, I feel better like about my deck. I was a little unsure about because I knew it could work, but like it wasn't working because I think the previous day I basically lost out.
Yeah, you lost out really hard.
And I was like, I know it works. And I think it was just, sometimes just unlucky.
Yeah, and I think
Bad
it's
matchup.
depending on who you're playing against too, right?
Yeah, bad matchups, bad pulls, like so I don't know. It feels good. I of course lost as soon as I got to top eight, but
Hey, still got the scar.
yeah. So I got my scar. So I don't know. I'm feeling pretty good. We're about to go to the pack rush.
Valentine's Day Pack Rush,
Yeah,
which is
so
happening all this week.
yeah, I was gonna say
So
if you're
check your
listening,
local game store.
what did you do this week?
I did terrible in the set champ that you top eighted.
Yep,
I think I
yep.
got 19th place out of 22 people.
He was very supportive though.
I had fun still. The previous set champ that I went to where you did terrible, I top eighted that one. So, it worked out. We both got our scar. Super excited about that. And yeah, we're going to go play Pack Rush here shortly.
Awesome.
So that's all we have for this week. And we will see you guys on the next episode.
And remember, it's a great day to have a great day.